What's up, everybody, and welcome to our third consecutive Victory Green Hour. As for the first time since December 24th, 2000, and for the first time ever in Cincinnati, the Philadelphia Eagles defeat the Cincinnati Bengals 37-17 in a complete dominating fashion. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor did not expect that when the game started.
No, I mean, little G Griffith was on last time, and he dropped a prediction of 28-3, and I was like, yeah, right. But here we are, 37-17, and I mean, we gave up a bit more than 3, but it's still, the margin is there. That was an impressive victory. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. The first half kind of had me a little on edge. There was some promise, but we were a little slow start, typical. Maybe we just have to accept that that's our reality. But the second half was absolute dominance on both sides of the ball. And I can't wait to get into it because there's so much to talk about.
There is so much to talk about. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, anywhere that you subscribe to podcasts at Eagles Pinpool. And then if you're joining us live, let us know your thoughts, your player of the game, your play of the game, and whatnot, as the Eagles were able to come away with a 37-17. I still can't believe it. Like, after the first drive by Cincinnati, they held on to the ball for over 10 minutes, went down and scored. I was like, oh man, this is the type of game it's going to be. And credit to Vic Fangio and that defense. They were able to diagnose what Cincinnati was doing and take advantage. And credit to the Eagles offense. Look, they didn't score in the first quarter again, but they scored on their first drive. They got a field goal. It just happened to be in the first couple of minutes of the second quarter because Cincinnati held on to the ball for so long. But such a great job by the defense. And this play was later in the game, but the play that Cooper DeJean made on 4th and 1, tackling Jamar Chase, Avonte Maddox does not make that tackle. And who knows what happens after that? Maybe the game changes, but that was a huge momentum changer for the Eagles and helped them salt away the game late.
Yeah, I mean, is it ironic that Cooper DeJean steps in and this team cannot lose now? Like, I don't think
great.
The defense looks amazing. Kenyon Mitchell was stealing the show, but Cooper DeJean over the last couple weeks, and with that play, was absolutely massive. I mean, hats off. I posted on Twitter, how he's catching some flack for the Bryce Huff signing, the weird situation with Devin White. CJ Gardner-Johnson was slow to get going, had an interception this game. So hopefully that's going to be what unleashes him going forward. But I mean, Zach Bond, huge game. Kenyon Mitchell's been amazing since winning the job from Isaiah Rodgers. Cooper DeJean, as soon as he was healthy and ready to go, has been amazing. Like, hopefully how he's able to work his magic with some contracts, if it is him in 4 years that has to negotiate, re-up these contracts. But hopefully these two corners, hopefully these two corners have shored up 2 of 3 cornerback spots for the next decade or more to come in Philadelphia, because those were 2 A+ picks, especially the Cooper DeJean pick. Watching Cooper DeJean fall and then watching how he make that pick, even though a lot of people had him mocked to them in the first round, and the fact that Kenyon Mitchell fell to us and fell in our laps too, huge. And they are showing out in a big, those 3 guys plus Saquon Barkley. Obviously, Saquon Barkley basically up until Cooper DeJean was inserted into the lineup was the reason that the grade was so high on the offseason, because he's been so instrumental. And Kenyon Mitchell helped buoy the grade a bit too. But now Cooper DeJean and Zach Bond continuing to ball out have made the offseason, have made Huff almost an afterthought. But I guess that's because we're in our winning ways. If we start losing again, Bryce Huff's not producing, maybe we're talking about a different thing. But for now, we're winning, and we won a very crucial game against a Bengals team that has been struggling this year. And then, of course, right at the game time cutoff, T. Higgins ended up not being able to play. How different does this game look with T. Higgins? Who knows? But let's not discount, we've been without key starters as well throughout the season. And we fought through it, fought through the adversity. I mean, we're still without Jordan Mailata, which it didn't feel like it with Fred Johnson out there on Sunday. So huge game by Fred Johnson as well, but I'm rambling on. So go back to the defense. Let's talk a little more. I know that you were hitting on the Cooper DeJean play. So
Yeah, so some numbers for the defense since the bye, and yes, this includes Deshaun Watson led Cleveland Browns and the Giants. But since the bye, the Eagles are first in points allowed at 12 points per game, first in yards allowed per game, 214.3 yards per game, second in sacks per game, 4.7, second in EPA/plays allowed, first in defensive success rate, and fifth in red zone scoring percentage. Like, if you look at what Miami did with Fangio last year, they started off slow. They had a lot of injuries on defense too. Like Jalen Ramsey was out, and I think one of the Baker was out, or whatever. But they started getting better, and I know that there was a lot of happiness out of Miami when Fangio decided to leave. But the way that these guys have bought in to Fangio's system, it just takes patience. And this is the worst town to preach patience in, obviously, because we want instant satisfaction, instant gratification. But it's just you got to give them a lot of credit, just for continuing to play his system and even making small adjustments. Because remember, in the Tampa game, they were playing off coverage, and for the most part, since the Eagles have been playing tighter coverage and taking advantage and not allowing quarterbacks that get rid of the ball, like Joe Burrow, that get rid of the ball fast, to complete passes right away, because there's a bunch of cover, a bunch of space, a bunch of cushion. So he and the players deserve a lot of credit, and that's what helped spark this run that they're on. And we talked about it. Okay, it was Deshaun Watson and it was Daniel Jones. Do it against a top level quarterback. Well, Joe Burrow is a top 5-10 quarterback, right? I think we can agree on that. They deserve
absolutely.
credit. So, and you're going to go up against another highly paid quarterback this week, and they're about to start this little quote unquote gauntlet of top end quarterbacks. We'll see how the game, how the defense continues to progress, and if the defense continues to make strides. But just the way that they have played over the last couple of weeks, and the way they played on Sunday, and the tackling has been so much better. The the run defense has been better, and that has helped, especially like with the way the offense starts slow. The defense, if they're not giving up a bunch of points early, it allows the offense to get into rhythm, and that's what's happened over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit on it. 2 missed tackles on Sunday. That's huge. I mean, before the bye week, it was 5, 6, 7 missed tackles. I mean, at the bye week, we were probably leading the NFL in missed tackles, and now it all turned around. And you hit on it. Vic Fangio's scheme is not the easiest scheme sometimes, and he's got to figure out who fits where and how it's going to work, who he can be confident in, and he's gaining a lot of confidence in some of these guys. Like Zach Bond is somebody that we were like, could he be, that guy that Vic Fangio turns into a stud at the linebacker position? And so far, it's held water through 8 weeks. He's able to take a couple rookie cornerbacks and turn them into clear, futures of this franchise. I mean, the skill was there to begin with, but then for a defensive coordinator to be able to take you and put you in a position to succeed like they've been succeeding is absolutely massive. You hit so much right on the head with how this has shifted. There's not a whole lot of bad to say from a defensive standpoint. I mean, the fact that it is now back-to-back weeks that Moro Ojomo has outsnapped Jordan Davis is interesting. But I mean, maybe they're figuring it out with Jordan Davis. This isn't a guy who's going to play 80, 90% of snaps for you. He's not Jalen Carter. He's not a guy who can be out there for 40, 50 plus snaps a game and give you high quality football. So maybe they're figuring out that mix between Jordan Davis, Moro Jomo, Milton Williams that's going to work on that within that front three. Jalen Carter
I also wonder, sorry not to cut you off, I also wonder how that will change against teams that actually run the ball. The Bengals don't really run. They don't have a running game. The Giants, Cleveland, like what will happen when they go up against Baltimore in a month? Tank Bigsby next week against Jacksonville. Maybe if they start, it could just be a circumstance they're going up against teams that like to pass the ball, so you want to get pass rushers out on the field. Maybe when you go up against Derrick Henry, when you go up against Brian Robinson Jr., when you go up against Najee Harris, like later in the year, maybe we'll see Jordan Davis on the field a little bit longer.
Absolutely. I agree. And it could be that too, because Jordan Davis clearly isn't as much of a pass rusher as Moro Jomo has shown to be, as Jalen Carter. Like those guys get after the quarterback. So Milton Williams, to an extent, I mean, he hasn't really been huge. Yeah, he had a half a sack and he had 3 pressures. So, I mean, he has his games, but he's not there as much as I thought he would be. And he was one of those guys, preseason, everyone was saying, let's see how he does, because this might be one of those ones where Howie locks him in cheap. Howie still has an extended Milton Williams. So it's interesting. He's letting things play out with the players in-house. No extension for Josh Sweat, no extension for Milton Williams. Some of those guys he wants to prove something. He's clearly hasn't seen enough proven yet.
I'm surprised when it comes to Milton Williams, though. I thought that
I am a bit surprised because, I mean, if you get Milton Williams going, I mean, we've seen the cost of doing business at the defensive tackle. I mean, it's an edge in the 3-4 scheme, but interior defensive lineman, we've seen where that interior defensive lineman market has been going. And you don't want Milton Williams to end up getting into a conversation where he could be getting top 5 money in any way. Not that I think he'd get there, but with every contract, you're creating the expectation of greater contracts down the road, just like the quarterback position has kind of grown into. Whether you agree with some of the contracts, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, doesn't really matter. It just sets a precedent for the future contracts. So hopefully Howie knows what he's doing in that regard with Milton Williams. But I mean, I agree. There's really not much more to say on the defensive front or anything that I can find that was really bad. I mean, like I said, out of the gate, I was sitting there, I was like, here we go. Joe Burrow's going to complete a bunch of passes and they're going to go on a run, but then they kind of locked down a bit.
It felt like he wasn't going to throw an incomplete pass. It was ridiculous that first drive. And when you have Nolan Smith covering Jamar Chase, I was expecting, here we go. This is going to be this type of game. But yeah, I mean, Nakobe Dean, he is such a force coming downfield. I say this time and time again, him coming downfield is way better than him but going backwards. They need to continue with that. He was out. He had a good game. Zach Baldwin had a good game. They only had one sack, but they did put pressure on Burrow when needed. And as I mentioned on the outset, tackling was superb for the Eagles. Let's see, Amani Bentley, go Birds. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk the Jaguars Eagles on Friday. I think it's Friday, so definitely join us when we talk that. Little G Griffith, dude, we did shout you out already. Congratulate. I mean, you had a 28-3 prediction on Friday, probably way better than me and Connor. So keep it up and keep supporting the Birds. Thank you for joining us. But yeah, the defense. The play by Isaiah Rodgers coming in cold after Darius Slay got hurt, running stride for stride with Jamar Chase and having the awareness. And he said he did. He said he knew what he was doing because he was asked in the press availability. Having the awareness to know that CJ was going to be there and to knock it to him, to tap it to him, and to allow to get the turnover. We're talking about a team that had 2 turnovers come into the game. They had 2 turnovers in the game, and Sirianni said it's 3 pretty much because they had the turnover on downs. But to be able to get the interception, to be able to get the fumble, just great work. And you talk about it. A lot of these things, you talk about sacks. You remember how they had, six sacks in the first 4 games and then 13 in 2 games. they come in bunches. The same can be said for turnovers. Maybe now turnovers will start coming in bunches and they'll be able to set up the offense in good field position.
I agree. I mean, we preached and I tweeted out the turnovers and the absolute essential need to start forcing some turnovers, and they went out and they definitely, like, a fourth down stop. Usually a fourth down stop is as important, and in this situation it was as important as a turnover, and it can be just as much pivotal in a turning point as any turnover. So I would agree. It basically was like three, but the two that we had were huge, and you just got to get off of that. Still waiting on Kenyon Mitchell's first interception. Hopefully it'll come.
Yeah, they
here
almost
soon.
had another one.
Exactly. Like, he's right there. He's right on the precipice. Like, I mean, if this guy would be leading the NFL in interceptions, if he could just
Xavier
get
McKinney
that,
has 6.
close those hands and
I
get
wish
that
we would've
ball in
signed-
his hands.
I really wish we would have signed Xavier McKinney.
I
is so
agree.
good.
Like, imagine what this defense would look like if you had McKinney in the fold along with what's already working. But I mean, otherwise, I guess the only thing is, like, I'm not taking anything away. Like, we dominated. We needed this win. The stats with and without T. Higgins are eye-popping. The Bengals are a shell of themselves offensively without T. Higgins. They average, I think I put the stat up on Twitter before the game. They average, like, fit in the 2 games without him prior to this game. They averaged over 50 yards less passing per game. And the impact on Jamar Chase, although it wasn't that instrumental this go around, in the 2 games prior to this, was fairly significant. The need to have that duo is vitally important for the Bengals offense. But I'm not going to take away from how good the performance was. You take what's in front of you. You take the situation that's there. We didn't pick to go out there without T. Higgins playing. We don't pick to go out there without Jordan Mailata right now. These situations happen. It's next man up, and it's keep the game rolling. And the Eagles defense took full advantage of that and many other scenarios and situations throughout that game.
Yeah, they did. And to be able to hold Jamar Chase, that he had 9 catches, he's going to get his catches, but he only averaged 6 yards. He had 54 yards. That's like he in the, I think it was the Baltimore game, he took a screen for like 60, 70 yards for a touchdown. That's the type of ability he has, and the Eagles didn't allow him to do that. On that 4th down play, when he was running and he did that back and forth, and I saw Cooper DeJean following him, I knew the ball was going to him. And one thing that I love that Cooper DeJean did, he didn't, like, we always say you want to break down, like, to make a tackle. He ran straight through Jamar Chase. That's how you have to attack somebody of Jamar Chase's ability. So that was just really fun to see. And again, ever since DeJean, and you mentioned it, has been inserted into the starting lineup, this defense has tackled a lot better. They've covered a lot better, and they've gotten more sacks, and he's been in on a couple of sacks. So, like, it's no coincidence that Cooper DeJean, even though he's a rookie, like, is having an impact on this defense. And you can just see the swagger. They're a lot. This defense is a lot faster. They're playing with a lot more intensity. And, like, the one thing we had talked about last year, what did they miss? They missed the swagger, the vibes that someone like CJ GJ brought. And with him coming back, it's helping everybody on this defense.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing that I would point out is 3rd down efficiency was brutal. I thought for sure that was another thing that I was like, oh man, we're never going to get off the field on 3rd down. They're just going to drive like this. So, I mean, 10 of 13 is a lot of 3rd downs to allow, but I mean, they cracked down when it mattered. I think they were 8 for 8 out of the gate. So that then led to them being 2 for 5 for the rest of the way. So, I mean, they cracked down on it, which is great, but I mean, if you get an even better offense and you get different situations, I mean, you can't be allowing 10 for 13 or greater efficiency on 3rd down like that. So hopefully they get that nipped in the butt before some better opponents. I mean, the Jaguars are not a better opponent, especially since they're going to be down Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas. But
is Brian Thomas not playing?
They say he's gonna miss 2 to 3 weeks. So wow. I mean, what's even left there?
So it's gonna be Tank
to
Bigsby,
pick at.
Evan Ingram. We'll definitely talk about that on Friday. Yeah, Gabe Davis. But the one thing that I think is crazy, looking at the stats, mentioned how the first drive for Cincinnati went for 10 plus minutes. The Eagles won the time of possession battle. And then I think that first drive was a 17-play drive, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
The Bengals only finished with 58 plays. So after that first drive, the Bengals had 41 offensive plays, scored 10 points, and the Eagles won the time of possession battle. Like, there was only one punt in the game. Like the Bengals didn't punt, and Braden Mann punted once. But just it's crazy that you look at all the stats, and after that, if somebody would have just watched that first drive, they would have been like, oh man, Cincinnati must have went up and down the field on the Eagles all day. Well, that didn't happen. And Vic Fangio and this defensive coaching staff deserves a lot of credit for that.
Absolutely. And on the flip side, moving to the offense, we scored on 7 of 8 drives. Mm-hmm. Like that's been unheard of with the Eagles this season.
It has, and you have to think about the way that Jalen. A lot of people have been talking about how Jalen like needs to play better. He threw the ball. He completed 80% of his passes. You don't, and I say this all the time. You don't throw the ball for the sake of throwing the ball. If it's warranted, you throw it. And whatnot. The one thing I really liked about this game plan, they were under center more, and I just think that Jalen is becoming more comfortable with being under center. And he has that touchdown pass that he threw to Devontae, the longest pass that he's thrown in his career, like it was over 55 yards, I think, in the air. That was blanket coverage by the defender. That was really that was Jalen. And again, we know that when it comes to AJ Brown, when it comes to Devontae Smith, he has full trust in them. So he'll give them the ability. Like John Dodson didn't get anything thrown his way. Anaya Smith didn't get anything thrown his way. Grant Calcaterra, he's averaging like 19. He averaged like 19 yards a catch. It's crazy. Like the ability that he has is a lot better than we thought it was being. Obviously, they have some connection from their year at Oklahoma together. But just Jalen was very efficient. Saquon had over 100 yards rushing, and it didn't really feel like it. That's how you know it was a good day. Like Saquon had over 100 yards rushing, and nobody would, unless you looked at the box score, nobody would have thought that he had over 100 yards. So just everything that the Eagles were able to do on the offensive side of the ball, you got to give credit to Kellen Moore, Sirianni, and Jalen Hurts, and just the offensive line. You had brought it out on the outset. Like Fred Johnson was going up against Trey Hendrickson. You mentioned it on Friday, 7 sacks. He's in the top 5 in the NFL in sacks, and he did nothing. And we remember, Fred Johnson struggled against Brian Burns. Well, he did not struggle against Trey Hendrickson, and he deserves a lot of credit for putting in the work this week and showing that he has the ability to play. And he played for, if I'm not mistaken, he actually played for Cincinnati, or was at least on the team. So he probably went out there to prove that they should have never let him go.
Yeah, I mean, 1 pressure allowed on 61 pass blocking, run blocking, any blocking type of snaps. And Trey Hendrickson was non-existent. Like, that's huge. And
they gave up 0 sacks.
0 sacks. 0 sacks. And again, hopefully you're pulling back your money on betting that Jalen Hurts is going to turn the ball over, because that's 3 straight games that Jalen Hurts has not committed a turnover. So,
I didn't bet on the Eagles game this week.
No, and ever since you made that joke of betting on him turning the ball over, he has not turned the ball over.
He hasn't.
Not yet. So maybe that's all you gotta do sometimes. You just gotta speak it into existence. But yeah, Fred Johnson was great. At the beginning of the game, Tyler Steen, he had his moments. He had the penalty there. He had a couple rough.
I don't blame him. That penalty that he had, that was such a late whistle. Like,
yep.
And Sirianni was actually asked about that today in his press conference, and he just we tell him to play to the whistle. So it's hard to get mad at a guy for playing to the whistle, especially when it was a late whistle. But I thought it was a bad call. If you don't want something, blow the whistle. Like, And the one thing that the Eagles, he was talking about, like the Eagles, especially like when it comes to the tush push, they're always trying to push forward. So that's what Steen was doing, what they're coached to do. It just happened to be
Exactly.
like as he's in the process of doing it, the ref decided to blow the whistle. I thought it was a bad call, but
Yeah, I mean, it was giving me like because it was a Devontae Smith
yeah,
catch too. It was giving me New
New
Orleans
Orleans Saints.
Saints game
Mhm.
vibes again, and I'm like, are they gonna blow? But they kept like never at any point did his forward motion really stop on the play. Like he went backwards a bit, but then he was coming forwards, and then the offensive lineman came into the fold, and they were pushing. And I mean, when Tyler Steen came in on that hit, he was going with a head of steam. There was no way you were going to blow the whistle quick enough to be able to stop him. So I agree with it. It was a questionable call, but I mean, we talked about it on Friday. Do you start Steen over Mekhi Becton going forward? Because the discussions out there in the Twitter, the Exosphere, and social media sphere now, would you move forward with Tyler Steen over Mekhi Becton?
Um, I'm of the ilk that you don't lose your position due to injury. So I would probably go back to Becton, but maybe on a short leash. But I mean, it's a good question, but and that could just be the athlete in me. I've like having played sports all my life and whatnot. Um, if especially if it's a freak injury, like concussions, I think are more freak injuries than anything. I don't take the starting spot from him, but Tyler Steen has really earned it. It just sucks for him too because he got hurt in preseason, and obviously there was really no starter determined in preseason. But he kind of lost the opportunity to battle. But
Mm-hmm.
I do think that he's definitely like right there. If he continues to keep playing like this, I would assume that Becton's going to be ready to go against Jacksonville, and I don't think the defensive tackles for Jacksonville will pose much of like like it won't be like a Dexter Lawrence type of guy. Obviously, Dexter Lawrence being one of the best in the league. They're more of an edge, with Walker. I think it's Walker and Hines Allen. They're more of an edge team. But if Becton struggles, I mean, I would not hesitate to go to Steen.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in the belief that you don't want someone to lose their job because of a freak injury, not their fault, not like and concussions are the worst ones too. But I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't try and mess with it. And that's where I'm at right now. Is for the longest time, while Becton was the center or the right guard, starting right guard, he was part of that team, that offense that was struggling. That doesn't mean he was at fault,
Okay,
but
then
now things.
going by your logic, do you keep Fred Johnson at left tackle when Mailata's healthy?
Oh, definitely not in that regard. In
I'm
that
just
one for
going by your
me,
logic.
I understand it, but that's purely like Fred Johnson had a great game against Trey Hendrickson. If we looked at purely like last week or weeks prior, Fred Johnson doesn't deserve to start over Jordan Mailata. Yeah, and I mean, it would be crazy to think that. I guess the only reason I think it here is because Steen and Becton were in a heated battle, and then Steen got hurt, lost his chance to earn the job, and now Becton gets hurt. Now Becton might lose his chance to earn the job back. It's going to be really interesting to see what Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni, or whoever is going to be in charge of making this
Stoutland.
decision.
It's
Jeff
Stoutland.
Stoutland. Yeah, like it's gonna be interesting to see what decision they take. And if Jeff Stoutland's at the forefront of this decision, that you can absolutely trust that it's coming from the top decision maker for this line of men and who's going to give them the best chance to win. And Mekhi Becton, he's looked good. He's had his moments. Tyler Steen, similar. But I mean, I guess the one positive that we can take out of this, whether Becton stays in as a starter or Steen stays as a starter, we have a starting right guard for next year if Becton doesn't come back and we can't re-sign Becton. So on the bright side, Tyler Steen is at least earning himself the right to win the job next year and not really be in too much of a competition. But I mean, it's going to be interesting because then you kind of come to that question of, okay, do we bring Mekhi Becton back? Is he going to earn money to go elsewhere? We've seen, Eagles backups or Eagles 1 or 2 year wonders at their O-line position earn massive contract extensions at the end of seasons that the Eagles just didn't decide to match and they ended up walking and they haven't done as well elsewhere. So I mean, it'll be interesting. It's one of the position battles. Well, really, the only position battle out there that warrants watching, and that you could really lean either way. And I don't think you're necessarily in the wrong with how you believe. Although purely from a financial standpoint, Jordan Mailata has to start over Fred Johnson.
You're probably right, but I'm just
And
saying. I was going based
history with
off of
Jordan
your logic.
Mailata. I know the logic. I get it.
Hey, I'm just throwing it right back at you. We know it's going to be Mailata, but I do think it'll be Becton when he's healthy and be on a shorter leash. I think we talked about this Friday, but I really like when it comes to Devontae Smith, the fact that he had one catch, -2 yards against the Giants, and then didn't say one word all week, just went out there and worked. And he got his today. Like, and Jalen said it after the game when he was being interviewed. He's like, we have a lot of mouths to feed, and everybody kind of just has to be humble, be patient, and it'll be their turn. We know it's been Saquon's. We know Saquon's had his turn. We know AJ's had his turn. And Devontae got a chance. And Devontae with the 45-yard touchdown catch. Like, and then I think it also helps that Devontae got paid, AJ got paid, Saquon got paid. So, like, they're not all in, like, contract years where they need numbers to try to get a big contract. So that helps for this year anyway. But, man, just his ability to track a ball, his ability to we call him the Slim Reaper. He's not that big. He's not a big guy, but he throws his body around and he'll take hits and he'll get up. Everything about Devontae's game is awesome. And people talk about, like, so what if the Eagles would have drafted Justin Jefferson instead of Jalen Reagor? Would we have Devontae? Would we have AJ? Like, what would the team look like now? It's like, that's one of the big what ifs. Like, would we have the type of offense that we have now if we drafted Justin Jefferson? In retrospect, could we have drafted, say, like a Micah Parsons if we still had that 10th pick or whatever it was when we took Devontae? Like, obviously the team will look really different, but it is an intriguing thing to think about. Like, I just love that Devontae Smith is on the Eagles, and just the character. He's not a lot of receivers are prima donnas. He's not that. He's very humble. I mean, he won a Heisman Trophy. And just remember, was it 2 years ago in 2022, first game, no catches, no targets, no yards, and then had over 100 yards the next week. Like, he just goes out there, does his job, and he knows the ball will find them when it needs to find them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think Devontae Smith does wonders for AJ Brown, because AJ Brown, we see that there's some diva in him, but it almost feels like having a guy like Devontae Smith across from you grounds him, keeps him playing as tough as he is, and kind of keeps his diva ways out of the picture. I don't know if it is Devontae Smith, but like having a room like that where it's Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, and they go out there and they leave it all on the field on game day, and they're fairly good with the media. They're fairly quiet. They're not like, we saw the situations with Brandon Ayuk. We see the situation with T. Higgins and how it's unfolding. We use the CD Lamb situation. Like, it's just constant in the media situations. AJ Brown, there was a bit of stuff made last year, but it was more locally. Like, if you watch the national media, there was nothing about AJ Brown, contract issues, disputes, team issues. You look at the Philadelphia media, it was all AJ Brown this, AJ Brown that, diva this, diva that. So, I mean, it was all in retrospect. The rest of these are hitting national media scales. AJ Brown never hit that scale. And the reason that he was frustrated in Tennessee, and it's tough to say at this time if
he didn't have a quarterback,
because the Titans were terrible.
Their offense ran through Derrick Henry, and he didn't really have a quarterback that could get him the ball. And while this offense, it seems like it seems like this offense, personality of this offense is going to be a running team, and run through Saquon Barkley. AJ knows he's going to get his. And like you said, it does help having a Devontae. Like, go ahead. If you're going to double AJ, Devontae will be open, or Saquon will eat. If you want to try to put the safety, split the fields with the safeties to cover the receivers, AJ or Grant Calcaterra or Dallas Goedert will eat, or Saquon or the tight ends will eat. So just all the talent that the Eagles have on the offensive side of the ball. This is what we kind of anticipated what the offense would look like. It took them a little bit to get going. Unfortunately for them, they're 5-2. There's a real chance that they beat the Jaguars, they beat the Cowboys. They're 7-2 going into that huge, one of the best Thursday night matchups that the NFL has put on. You could have for first place in the NFC East, the Eagles and the Commanders. And I still can't believe the Commanders won that game yesterday. The Bears are just dumb, but that's a different story.
Their coverage on that, you watched, ESPN this morning, they were ripping. Well, they were ripping Tyreek Stevenson because what was he doing for 5 seconds of the play, and then they're ripping just the position. And you always bat the ball down. They bat the ball up. It was such.
And it was Stevenson who hit the ball, who batted the ball backwards. By the way,
he was exactly
Also,
it's just
even before that play, they were on the 1 yard line and they tried to hand the ball to a freaking offensive lineman, and he fumbled.
I mean, if you're gonna thank anybody, you should just thank the Bears for that win, as a Commanders fan and Commanders player, because they gave it to you essentially in those couple of scenarios. And I mean, even they showed the Hail Mary, and they had a spy on Jaden Daniels. Yeah, they had 3 men rushing, and TJ Edwards was spying Jaden Daniels he's going to run for 60-something yards.
Matt Eberflus should not be a head coach in the NFL. He's an idiot. Just saying.
But beyond that, Jalen Hurts, all through the week, Jalen Hurts was catching so much flack, national media and local media alike. And listen, can you trust the guy to go out and throw the ball 40 times a game? No. Absolutely not. Never. Can you trust the guy to throw the ball 20 to 25 times and be effective? Absolutely. The week prior, he only had to throw the ball 16, 17 times. Well, and he
threw it 14, but got sacked 7 times. So it was really 20, 21.
Yeah. So, he went out there and I think he was 10 for 14. And then this week he's 16 for 20. He's trying to be a little bit safer. Sure, are there things we'd like to improve or like to see him improve? Absolutely. But everybody needs to understand, you cannot compare necessarily a Jalen Hurts to a Joe Burrow or a Jalen Hurts to a pocket passer, a more pure pocket passer, because that's just not who Jalen Hurts is. And then I guess that puts him up against the Lamar Jacksons of the world, which could be fair in a way, but we know that Jalen Hurts was drafted in the 2nd round. Lamar Jackson was drafted in the 1st round, top quarterback. I'm not making excuses for Jalen Hurts, and I'm one of those guys that obviously I come out of some games and I'm frustrated. You missed that. He missed this. You can pick certain parts of his game apart, but he made some big plays. The tush push is just the guy had 3 touchdowns on the ground alone. Thank you, tush push.
Well, he did have the 1 RPO one.
And the 1 RPO one, of course.
Which he looked faster running the ball. Did you notice that?
I did.
More decisive.
Some games he looks decisive. Some games he looks a little more skittish, a little more nervous running the ball. But there's one thing we can trust with Jalen Hurts. And of course, if you were watching ESPN or any national media, even on social media, some of the guys who was it that called out Chase Daniel and said sometimes you just gotta know what you're talking about, and it was somebody from FS1 who was defending Jalen Hurts.
Emmanuel Ocho.
Yeah, it was Emmanuel Ocho, and he was defending him and talking Hurts up on Friday, and then of course that same day Chase Daniel was kind of talking Jalen Hurts down. And then earlier in the week, Greg Cosell on the Ross Tucker podcast was saying you wish he could do some of the easier things better. But at the end of the day, he can make some big plays. He can do what you need him to do. He can cost you games. He can win you games. And at the end of the day, I think it's clear he has won us more games than he has cost us. And it's similar to the whole what happens at the end of this season with Nick Sirianni. Because, of course, that's going to become a debate. It was actually a debate this morning. It was Unsportsmanlike Conduct. It's one of the ESPN shows in the morning. I was watching it, and they actually brought it up. And the question was, what do you actually think they realistically can finish at? And both of the co-hosts said 10-7. And then he's like, are you going to fire Nick Sirianni? He would probably go down in history as the winningest coach to ever get fired. But the question may not necessarily be about Sirianni at that point, but are you able to keep Kellen Moore? Do you want to keep Kellen Moore? There may be some different things that come up, but if the Eagles continue to play the way they're playing with Nick Sirianni seemingly taking a step back since that game where he was talking to the fans, he's been like, you don't see them pan the camera and he's doing anything wild. He's not doing anything crazy. He's a little more tame with the media. If Nick Sirianni keeps this up and the Eagles keep winning, I mean, I don't think you can get rid of Nick Sirianni. I think he continues to be employed as the Eagles head coach, and hopefully, we know Vic Fangio ain't going for a head coach job, but hopefully Kellen Moore doesn't get any offers and we can have some more continuity because, I mean, Jalen Hurts has had 3 different play callers over the past 3 seasons as well. So you don't want to continue to see that change as well if something's working, especially down this stretch of games.
Well, I mean, you can also include, if you want to include since Sirianni's first year, his 4, because Sirianni first was started out as the play caller, then it went to Steichen, then it went to Johnson, and now it's Kellen Moore. Also, you know who deserves a lot of credit, and a lot of people, and you've been talking about him. Like, I think Nick Sirianni, this team plays for him, and we've talked about it. He doesn't feel comfortable talking in front of the media. He longs talk, but there's something behind the scenes when he is with his players that allows him to just open up and be himself. And that's all that should matter. If the players see Sirianni as this down-to-earth, cool guy and somebody that they are relatable to and somebody that gets them and somebody that's going to fight for them, they'll play for him. And that's exactly what is happening right now. They are playing for Nick Sirianni. And he deserves a lot of credit just for when it got to the bye week and they were 2-2, things could have spiraled out of control coming out of the bye week. And I get it. They haven't played the toughest of competition, but they still win. And they still play for him, and they play hard for him. Like, everybody mocked Sirianni when he shaved his head. Did the players? No. And the players stood up for him, and the players talked about how they wanted him to be himself. And what's happening? He's being himself. It felt like the first 4 games of the year, he was kind of holding things back, and that's not who he is. Now he's a flamboyant guy. Like, he's an outgoing guy, and ever since he's kind of gotten back to himself, they've looked like I'm not saying this is like the 2022 Eagles, but they've looked like a version of the 2022 Eagles that went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think some people are calling it the Baldiani era, and they're like 3-0 in it. So I mean, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's definitely not just the haircut. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. It's just like the Lions with Dan Campbell. Like, the Eagles embody, you know, the culture and their coach. They're the living embodiment of their coach and some of their players, of course, as well, because you see them getting behind Cooper DeJean. You see them talking highly of, like, he's changed the defense. He had a massive impact on this defense, and we can see it, and we can see it even on the players, and what they're saying and how they're speaking about him and Kenyon Mitchell, and how you know, there's less of a need to constantly have, you know, safety help over the top watching these guys, because Kenyon Mitchell can cover his own shit. Cooper DeJean can cover his own shit. Like, imagine the safeties can actually do safety things from the Vic Fangio standpoint and not have to watch over a cornerback who could be costing you big plays and stuff like the Eagles have so famously had with guys like, you know, Rasul Douglas, Jalen Mills. We've been there. We've done that with some of those guys where you have to have safety help over top constantly, because the top will get blown off. So I think, you know, we are not the first show to not be critical of Nick Sirianni. We were very critical through the first, you know, leading into the bye week and stuff. And I think there's a lot to be said about these next 3 weeks. If we can come out of this 3-0 with 2 very crucial NFC East matchups, that would be humongous for the Eagles to be sitting at 8-2 and leading the NFC East after that Commanders game in 3 weeks. That would be humongous. And there's some tough games coming up after that stretch. we could hit some bumps in the road, but this stretch is pretty big. And I mean, the Cowboys are kind of imploding as we're seeing. Things are not good in Dallas in Jerry world. So it'll be interesting to see what Dallas team we get. Obviously, they always play the Eagles hard. And as they continue to hit bump after bump in the road, they're going to want to play the Eagles even harder. And you fear for some of the players in that regard, because then, maybe they're going to try taking some cheap shots or doing some, Dallas Cowboys stuff when the Cowboys and the Eagles play. So it'll be interesting to see, but the Jaguars should be an easy win, especially losing their two top receivers. But
remember talking about coming out of the bye in that first 4-game stretch, we were like, if the Eagles can go 3-1, I mean, that's outstanding. Well, they're 3-0 right now. I think if they go 3-1, it might be a disappointment at this point.
We better not lose to the Jags. Like, come on now.
Yeah, you would hope they don't lose to the Jags. Dougie P is going to want to come in here and try to change the fortunes around for the Jaguars. But like, if you think about it, Jaguars, Cowboys, Commanders, and Rams. Like, now we look at this 4-game stretch. 3-1. They can go 3-1 in this stretch. That sits you at 8-3. Like that'd be really good. And obviously, like, you got to play the game. The games aren't played on paper, but like it feels like the Eagles are like, they started off 10-1 last year. They obviously had to learn a new offensive system, and while it's not a brand new defensive system, you have the guru of the system. And again, I'm still not the biggest Fangio fan, but he does deserve credit for getting this defense turned around. And we always talk about how there's really no preseason because nobody really plays, but they've gone through their preseason pretty much. Like, all they have to do is just continue to progress every week. Do something, keep stacking W's, keep getting better. And that's what it seems like the Eagles are doing. And if they keep doing that, I mean, this team, I think right now the Lions are the class of the NFC, safe to say. But who's the second best team in the NFC if you had to say it right now? Who's the second best team in the NFC?
I mean, right at this very moment, I would probably have to say the Washington Commanders, just the way they're playing, how they're playing, they're winning games, whether they're clean wins or not, it doesn't really matter. But I mean, I would say the NFC after the Detroit Lions is pretty wide open. The Vikings started out high flying. They've kind of slowed down. The Packers are coming. My team that I picked to be in the Super Bowl, the Packers have started to come around. Yeah, Jordan Love's banged up again, so who knows there. And then nobody in the NFC South and nobody in the NFC West right now is worth talking about too much as a threat. But the 49ers are the 49ers. The NFC West, 4-4, 4-4, 4-4, 3-4. Like, looks like the NFC South.
Jonathan Gannon a better coach than Nick Sirianni?
Better than Nick Sirianni? I don't think so. I mean, he's doing a lot with what he has in Arizona, and they're taking strides. But I don't think he's a better coach than Nick Sirianni. But they're very different coaches. Yeah. Nick Sirianni is not a play caller. He's a culture building type of coach. He likes to wish he could be a play caller. Jonathan Gannon's a play caller, and what's the culture like in Arizona? How's things like that in Arizona?
A defensive play caller. It's different than being an offensive play caller.
Exactly. It's hard to compare the two. But yeah, like, I mean, if we're talking in theory, like the Commanders, maybe the Packers is like the second.
There's that group. It's the Eagles, the Commanders, the Packers, like maybe Minnesota. Maybe I think Minnesota's frauds, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think we need to see the season out with Minnesota. Their defense is allowing such low amounts of points, and I don't think that holds personally. But
and the Lions, it looks like the Lions are coming out and wanting to put boot to ass every week. Like, they are they want to blow teams out. I mean, an Eagles-Lions NFC Championship matchup would be fun and scary, especially since it'll probably be in Detroit. But they do play in the best division in football, so maybe they'll pick up a couple of losses here and there. And if the Eagles can continue their winning ways, who knows what happens with who gets the bye and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely be interesting. Like you look defensively, the Eagles and the Lions of defenses 132 points allowed, 134 points allowed, but the Lions can absolutely put points on the board. Jared Goff threw for 85 yards and the team scored what, like 50
50, yeah,
points?
that was crazy when I saw that.
Like that's one of the craziest stats you're ever gonna see. Like people were
But
tweeting like
I bet you though, people aren't going to be like, "Can you win when Jared Goff only throws for 85 yards?" Like they did when Jalen Hurts, they won, and Jalen only threw 114.
it,
Standards, man. I mean,
true, true.
people, you gotta treat. I think you gotta treat quarterbacks all the same. Well, the upper echelon quarter. I don't see
I don't even
Jared
think
Goff's an
Jared
upper.
Goff's an upper echelon quarterback. That's just a really good team. That's a
Yeah.
well built team. I think similar to Brock Purdy. Throw Brock Purdy in Jacksonville. Is he the same as he is in San Fran? I don't think so. I definitely don't think so.
I don't know because Trey Lance couldn't do it in San Francisco.
This is true. Yeah, this is true
So
about
who
the Trey
knows? Who
Lance.
knows? But yeah, the Eagles with a huge victory, one that we did not expect. We both picked the Eagles to lose. I am now 4-3. You are 2-5 on the season. We got to figure out try to get back on our winning ways and picking Eagles games. I think we're both going to pick them against the Jacksonville
Yeah, I
Jaguars.
mean, I get the fact that my record is the mirror look of their actual
opposite.
record. I mean, I'm okay being like that. If
And
they're
keep
going
picking
5
them.
and 2 and I'm 2 and 5, I'll take it.
Go 2-15. That means the Eagles went out. That means
Well,
they
I
would
think
end the
they've
season
proven
on a
enough
13
that
game
now
winning streak.
they've proven enough to me that now I'm heavily going to start considering them. Whereas I was constantly in my mind questioning, and now I'm like, well, now I'm going to go out there and just slap Eagles and hopefully they keep winning.
Hopefully. Well, I love Victory Green Hours. They're fun. We will be back on Friday to get you set for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Dougie P's return, his second return to Philly. We'll see what kind of ovation he gets. The last time they came to Philly, I think it was his first year in Jacksonville. It was pouring rain that game. The Eagles actually fell down, I think, 10-0, 14-0, and then they came back to win the game. I don't anticipate that happening this week, but hey, you never know. The Eagles aren't the fastest starting team in the NFL, obviously, as they're the only team. Do you consider, so since obviously they scored on their first drive, but it was in the second quarter, like, do we put an asterisk there and make, like, it could be half first quarter because it technically was the first drive?
Yeah, I mean, when you have a drive from your opponent that takes 10 minutes
10
and
plus
15
minutes.
seconds off the clock, I mean, that only gives you 4 minutes and 45 seconds to do your own thing. And generally, you don't want a drive to go that quickly. So I mean, there's definitely an asterisk there.
Yeah, I agree with that. It can be semi-considered a first quarter score, first quarter points. We'll give them 1.5, whatever. It was only a field goal, but hopefully they score soon. But we got to be patient, and we can't be disgruntled when they don't score in the first quarter. They are a team that likes to build, and then they put up 37 points in the last 3 quarters of the game. Like, let's be honest, that this team is starting to hit their stride, and hopefully they can continue with it. As I said, we'll be back on Friday to get you set for the Eagles and Jaguars. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHero54. And follow Eagles Pin Pool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, all the podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, at Eagles Pin Pool. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.